Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we're going to be doing something a little bit different this time around. Normally, I like to keep a build secret till I'm finished with it because I like surprising people with the video, but this build was so exciting that I just wanted to make a video on it now, even though I'm not done with the progression of said build. Now, this is me in the middle of pushing corruption. I will probably stop around at like 700-ish. Right now I'm at like 200-ish, but the reason why I wanted to make this video was I wanted to talk about what goes behind the scenes when I make these kinds of builds. So we're going to be talking about the story that led me to this specific build that you see on screen, and I'll explain this build later if you stick around. If you haven't already, I would heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of supporting me currently. So let's talk about what I did last night, shall we? So I finished off the zombie necromancer leveling, right? The big zombie necromancer leveling. And I was like, okay, let's try small zombies. So I went and pushed some corruption with the big zombie. Then I got double cycles of putrescence, right? And I tried small zombie stuff. And the biggest problem was it just felt really clunky to me, so I ended up scrapping that version. And it led me to a night of theory crafting because, I'm not going to level a whole necromancer and not do something with it, right? So I decided to do some work. So the first things off that I tried was I tried volatile zombie with infernal shade. Did you know that if you use the node inside volatile zombie, there's a node that casts infernal shade? If you use the node that makes it so it casts at a minion, right, and then you use the node that makes it explode at the end of infernal shade, if the zombie casts a new infernal shade on the old infernal shade, it causes the explosion to go off instantly. This means that if you keep summoning zombies, you can actually keep making infernal shade explosions going off, like the explosions, which means that that might end up being a build in its entirety. But I'm going to play that on Lich probably, so that will be a future video that we'll be talking about later down the line. So I canned that for a little bit because we're going to be playing that on Lich instead because it's better on Lich. So now we're playing this. Now we're playing this necromancer, and I have no build still after maybe 5 hours of work of me trying to figure out how that zombie infernal shade thing worked. Right. So now we wanted to try Bone Curse. I wanted to try Bone Curse again, mainly because I was like, you know what? Maybe there's a way of abusing this. And I sat there for, I don't know, like a few hours, just like looking at skill trees and trying to figure out something that no one has ever really done before. And that's how I ended up on this. So Bone Curse is very finicky. It's notorious because it is one of the most nerfed skills in the entire game. If you go by patch notes, and recently it got a rework. Yes, the most changed skill in the entire game got another rework, and that's on top of the other rework that happened before the other rework. Bone Curse has a history of just being broken in multiple different ways of the word, whether that be broken in bugs or broken OP. Either way, Bone Curse has seen a lot by now. Now, this version of Bone Curse that got changed was specifically around Cursed Limbs. Cursed Limbs got reworked, so now whenever you cast Bone Curse and then hit something, it doesn't apply Bone Curse to it like it used to, right? It just recasts Bone Curse as the whole curse, right? The whole physical curse. It just recasts it in an area. It's kind of like a trigger, kind of like if you're like playing Path of Exile and you played Cast on Crit or something. That's how it triggers now. And this led to the creation of an entirely new build, as you can see on screen. So what's going on? How does this build work? And it took me I think 8 hours to get to this point last night because, like I said, I was testing so many different things. I was testing okay, can Bone Curse work in this setup? Hey, can I squeeze out more damage with Bone Curse this way? You guys never get to see this side of my work because, I never record it or stream it, but it's usually just me sitting there looking at the planner, trying to figure out what the heck to do. And now we figured it out finally. So the whole concept of the build is we're playing around a node inside Bone Curse that casts Rip Blood when casts Rip Blood when Bone Curse times out. So Bone Curse timing out can happen a few different ways. The main way of it timing out is just by duration. Bone Curse has an 8-second duration, and that is a long time to wait for an extra extra Rip Blood cast, right? That sounds awful. So in theory, I instantly went for a different way. So we're applying Bone Curse to our minions, right? Utilizing the node that allows us to apply it to our minions. That means that when the Bone Curse times out on the minion, it will cast this extra Rip Blood. So if I cast it on like 9 minions, I'd get 9 Rip Blood casts, which sounds cool in theory, right? So I'm like, okay, how do we make it so that the Bone Curse, quote unquote, times out, right? In terms of duration. So I decided to go for the node, like the one that makes it into an AoE, right? The reason why we like that is because if you look at that node, the nodes after it make it so you can reduce Bone Curse's duration, and you can get it all the way down to like 0.8 seconds. So what would happen is I would cast Bone Curse Aura, I would apply Bone Curse to my minions, I'd turn it off again, and then bam, that's like 9 Rip Blood casts right there, right? And that would work if it worked. So it turns out, even though it specifically states Bone Curse cast by the aura, right, are reduced in duration, it does not apply to the Bone Curse applied to minions. The Bone Curse that gets applied to the minions with the aura still lasts 8 seconds, even though you're reducing it. So I'm pretty sure that's a bug. So hopefully that gets fixed eventually. But that ruined all that. And that was like 2 hours of work trying to figure out how all this works, right? I know it sounds like, oh, Dread takes forever on these things. Like, no, it's because I'm testing every single possibility. I'm going in, I'm testing it, then I have to re-level the skill, going in, test it again, re-level, etc., right? Like I'm doing a lot of work in this regard, right? So fine, screw it, whatever. This version's not going to work. I just threw it out the window and went back to the drawing board. So we want Bone Curse to timeout. So it turns out, if you grab Illusion of Pain, the node that like makes it so Bone Curse like deletes itself after one hit, right? That does work with, of course, Crimson Enlightenment, the node that makes it so that, you know, you cast Rip Blood on timeout. Now, this is actually known. This has been known for a while. This is actually a really cool way of clearing because you cast Rip Blood. I mean, you cast like Bone Curse, right? And then it will cast Rip Blood after you proc that Bone Curse, which only takes 1 hit. So it's actually very easy to proc a bunch of Rip Bloods very quickly, right? And this has been a known feature for a while. This is actually one of the busted ways Bone Curse could work on your minions, because, you know, you would do this with Bone Curse and reapply said Bone Curse to your minions, yada, yada, yada. And that was like a busted way of playing. And that got removed because of the way that Illusion of Pain works, like the trigger on Bone Curse hit, right? So now what we do is we apply Bone Curse to our minions, right? Then we hit them with something like Marrow Shards. Why are we using Marrow Shards? Well, Marrow Shards can pierce all the minions and hit all the minions at once, while Rip Blood can only hit like 1 minion at a time. So Marrow Shards is better. So not only are we speccing into Marrow Shards, we're speccing into Bone Curse, we're speccing into Summon Skeleton to have minions, we're also speccing into Rip Blood. So that's 4 out of 5 of our specialization slots, which, by the way, means that we can't play this on a Lich, because most Lich builds predominantly they usually use Lich Form and Death Seal to be competitive in in-game. So that means that we have to play this on Necromancer, because Dread Shade's all that's required to make Necromancer competitive in in-game, right? So we're playing this on a Necro now, which obviously. Now, the problem now is I cast Illusion of Pain once on my minion, right? And then it has a 6-second cooldown, which sucks, obviously, because, you know, 9 Rip Bloods in 6 seconds is terrible, okay? It's just terrible, right? But there is a solution. If we run the Illusion, Curse Limbs, right? Curse Limbs, the thing that makes it so that we recast Bone Curse, because of the changed functionality, instead of applying Bone Curse on hit like you see, it actually casts Bone Curse in an AoE, which can also recast Bone Curse on your minions, which means that you get like an extra like 3-ish casts of Bone Curse, and technically with enough cooldown recovery speed, you can reach like 100% uptime of Bone Curse, in theory, right? So you can get like a bunch of Bone Curses, I mean, a bunch of Rip Bloods per second. Right now, I think I'm averaging around 54 hits per time I cast my Bone Curse if I'm on a single target. Because what happens is I cast Bone Curse, I clear the Bone Curse, right? Then I hit the enemy, which then casts Bone Curse again, and then I clear them again on my minions, and then I cast Bone Curse again. And the duration of Curse Limbs is actually reduced by Illusion of Pain, which is fine. It's fine, right? We just got to reduce the cooldown, yada, yada, yada. And it just leads to these amazing explosions that you're seeing on screen. So there will be a full build guide on this, but this is just how I ended up playing one of the most complicated builds I think I've ever played. I don't think I've ever played a build that's as complicated as this, mainly because like it took this specific skill specialization set, right? I had to make sure that my minions weren't dying to my own damage. Spoilers, enemies weren't killing my minions nearly as much as I was killing my minions. That is because Illusion of Pain crits. So either you have to get minion crit immune somehow, right? Or use a singularity, or you have to like, you know, just make your minions tanky enough. But thankfully, skeleton warriors can reach that tankiness, and they've actually proven to be way tankier than I thought they could be. Mainly because I have a tier 7 minion health regen helmet. I think it's a belt actually, and I also have like 700% minion health, and that seems to be enough on top of the physical resistance they get inside their tree, and of course the bone armor that they get for the 40% less. All that combined means that like our minions can actually survive our own pelting of damage. Because remember, when you cast Bone Curse on your minions, they get Bone Curse too, so you deal damage to them too. So I have to like, you know, make sure that they don't die to my own damage, and thankfully they don't now. And all of this combined leads to probably one of the most entertaining builds I've ever played. Whenever you cast whenever you cast Bone Curse on your minions in a pack of enemies, the Rip Bloods just seem endless. They just spew out like a fountain of Rip Bloods. Like, it's literally a fountain of blood, man. Like, you can't get more metal than that. Like, it looks sick as hell. Like, I just love the idea of like my minions and enemies being bathed in blood constantly. It's very flavorful for Necromancer, right? So we're going to make a full build guide on this later once I actually push corruption with it. With all that being said, this has been Dread, and this is the story of how I accidentally stumbled upon one of the most complicated builds I have ever played. Bye.